Hello and welcome to Draft Day. My name is John Fleming. I am a host of Draft Day. I am joined by a host of Draft Day, but the other host of Draft Day, Jason Bradshaw. Jason, how are you?
John, I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm tired, but
Okay.
I'll
Well,
make it.
hopefully this will rejuvenate your spirits. Nothing is more exciting than looking back at drafts. At least I hope so. That's kind of the whole premise of this show.
Yeah.
That kind of no-selling our whole thing. That's probably not the best idea, but we will be drafting to the National Football League. We will be doing the 2011 NFL draft, a draft which is, I actually would say it's near and dear to my heart. Like, I actually remember this draft pretty well. It was the rare time during that period where the Rams did not have an exceptionally high pick, but they drafted like probably the best player that they drafted during that period.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah. I mean, he
believe, if I remember correctly, I think I watched the first round with you. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think I did in your
that,
dorm room.
that it's entirely possible. I mean,
Yeah, that
well,
was like
20.
right when they started doing the
Yeah.
Thursday broadcasts.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's right. Because that would have been your just before you graduated.
Yeah. But before we do that, we have some other business to attend to. Namely, our to follow up from our previous episode, we have a winner for which episode that we are going to do a draft of. It is obviously not the one that we're doing today because we wanted to give the listeners choice a proper amount of energy, a proper amount of research. So the winner, for anyone who did not follow along with the poll, and for anyone who didn't listen to the last episode, we had a poll where we determined um, what would be our next topic. We are going to do the presidential hotness draft. That is going to be
We are indeed.
yes, but this is just kind of a relatively light Tuesday night record. We're just gonna do kind of more to the point of what we typically do on this show, and then we'll be
Yeah.
ready to totally cut loose whenever we're ready, and then we'll draft presidents by hotness. But
Yeah. I mean, it should be a fun time, and not to say that we won't do others from that. I think there were some other good ideas that we definitely had there, but the presidential hotness, I think you guys will want us to come up with fun reasonings as well as maybe just some jokes even to go on there. And maybe we can record it on a night when I can partake in a few libations to let the inhibitions down or something. I don't know. So
apparently he needs a few drinks to get ready for the task at hand. That's okay.
I,
We'll
I when I told my wife about the draft and I asked if she would cameo, she laughed but didn't say no.
okay. So we
So if nothing else, I may have her help me
yeah.
prep.
Yeah, this is still our chance to find out if we have a single person that is interested in men that listens to our podcast. I certainly would expect that our show is not necessarily like what people are listening to because they're interested in men, but perhaps kind of a coincidence. But
Yeah,
yeah,
not mutually exclusive by any stretch.
yeah. But speaking of looking at things kind of off kilter as they regard to presidents, I have some trivia for you. It is
I'll
not
bring it
related to our
on.
draft at all, but it is related to a recent development in the world of just presidents kind of existing in the world.
Okay.
So, yesterday, the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama, for reasons that I don't totally understand, but he does it every year, dropped his summer playlist,
Mm.
in which he listed a bunch of songs that he's listening to in the summer of 2024. Did you see this list at all?
No, I haven't seen this list.
Oh, thank God. Okay, that was a little worried, but okay. I figured that if you saw it, you probably didn't like study it because like why would you?
Yeah.
But what I did is I pulled out 5 of the songs from the list, as
Okay.
well as, and I pair them up with 5 songs that are not on the list. And I want you to guess which song
Ooh.
of a pairing that I give you is on Obama's playlist. And I will say, the thing about the Obama playlist, because I'm going to make fun of it, is I don't know why it exists. I don't know what the market for it is. And I just find it very funny that like anybody would possibly care. Like it was like I actually kind of saw why people were interested in it whenever he was like when he was the president or like when he was in his 40s, but like he's a 63-year-old man at this point. It does not matter. It truly does not matter what this old retired guy's listening to.
Well, yeah, and it's like, and if I remember, like, I remember some of them from the past, and it's not like, oh, he's only listening to current stuff.
Yeah, he that actually is a kind of a good segue into the first one I have listed here. So there's broadly 2 genres of songs on the Obama playlists. One of them is like songs that are a million years old, and the other one is songs that are basically meant to be the Steve Buscemi "How do you do, fellow kids" kind of meme
Stuff
for
that his
Obama.
daughters are telling him about or something.
Yeah, like even his daughters on some of these songs are like, not that they wouldn't be listening to them, but they're not necessarily like the vanguard of like being cool or hip at this point. Not that they ever were, but you know, at this point, if you're like a teen, you're looking at these like people in their 20s and you're thinking they're old, which obviously they don't think we're cool, but hey, they're right, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we're not cool, but it has nothing to do with our age. Like,
Yeah. Like my stance has always been like I'm not going to pretend to like, modern pop songs just for the sake of trying to look cool because no one's going to think that I look cool because like whenever I was a teenager, I didn't think there were 35-year-old guys who were like trying to relate to teenagers that were cool. I thought they were kind of weird if anything, but
I'll say, I
just gonna
mean,
be
the only
myself.
35-year-old guys I thought were cool were like athletes or professional sports teams I followed. That's,
Yes,
yeah,
I'm quite
actors,
notably not.
maybe. Yeah. No, I fully embrace the dad thing now. I'm just like hardcore
I
dad
mean,
vibes.
it's literally in your Twitter handle. Like
Yeah.
you've embraced it like few. You and Jack John have embraced it the most because you made your Twitter handles a reference to your having of child.
Or children.
All right. Well, yeah, but you had the name I think before. Or did you have the name before? You definitely used the dad Shaw
Mm.
persona in some form when you only had one kid. Maybe not the
Yeah.
Twitter name.
Not I think maybe it might have been a previous one when I had a rekindling of Twitter when I was just
Yeah,
bored all
maybe.
the time up with the baby, or when my son was a baby. But I don't believe this
Sure.
incarnation was done till after my daughter was born.
All right. So let's go with a duo that is the theme of this duo is rich man. Did Barack Obama include the Beatles' 1967 Indian-inspired song "Baby You're a Rich Man"? Or did he include the 2024 song by the artist Tommy Richman, which I don't think it's ever been pronounced Rich Man, but that's how it's spelt, so that's fine. The 2024 breakout "Million Dollar Baby." Which of those 2 songs did Obama include on his playlist?
Um, Obama doesn't strike me as a Beatles guy, so I'll go with Million Dollar Baby as being on Barack Obama's playlist.
So I will say that I'm pretty sure Obama is a Beatles guy, but not this particular song, this particular
Okay.
year. You are correct. It is Tommy Richman. He is a fan of like 20-year-old white rappers with bad mustaches.
I mean, who among us? Who among us?
Yeah. All right. The next battle is what was Barack Obama's preferred song that's popular with Zoomers that's explicitly about lesbian relationships? Is
Oh,
he going
geez.
with Chihiro by Billie Eilish or Good Luck Babe by Chappell Roan?
Oh man, my heart's telling me one, but my head's telling me the other.
I mean, I did kind of intentionally. I think either one of these would be plausible. It just so happens that one
Yeah.
is and one is.
Chihiro?
So Chihiro is the one that you're guessing is on the playlist.
Yes.
That is correct. There was
I knew he would disappoint me.
one of the most inexplicable uproars that I could possibly imagine happened yesterday with a bunch of Chapel Roan fans on Twitter who were mad that she was not included on the playlist, which I cannot imagine a thing mattering less. But like, okay,
I can imagine there's probably a lot of them. Like, obviously, I don't know the list, but like, if Sabrina Carpenter wasn't on there, I'm sure her fans went crazy as well.
Sabrina Carpenter also wasn't on there, and her fans did go crazy. So you're
Uh,
correct.
I mean,
Um,
predictable things are predictable. I mean, I have still yet to actually listen to like an entire Sabrina Carpenter song, but I know how they get
well,
because younger women love to be mad online. I once got attacked in a previous incarnation of Twitter because I had reposted a GIF of Chris Pronger checking jokingly Justin Bieber up against the boards. I'm like, this is hilarious. I love Chris Pronger. And I was attacked in Italian by a Justin Bieber fan, a believer, for saying that this was funny to me. So,
I don't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure that Bieber never got like attacked in like a criminal sense. I'm pretty sure it was like
I was like jokingly pushed up, like pinned to the boards by Chris Pronger, who's a lot larger than him because Chris Pronger is a very large man. And it was like a celebrity all-star game. Like,
yeah. But good call going with Billie Eilish. I think Chapel Roan is building a lot of credibility in terms of like young artists that old people kind of feign interest in to seem cool. But I think Billie Eilish is still holds the title for that. Like now that like
yeah,
Taylor Swift has aged out of being truly young, I think that Billie Eilish has inherited
yeah,
that title.
yeah.
All
And
right.
yeah, my wife has not stopped talking about Chapel Roan because she's going to see her in October, and she's very excited
Oh,
about it.
nice. From what I hear, she puts on a good show. My sister saw
Yeah.
her in May opening up for Olivia Rodrigo before she
Okay.
like really broke through.
Where
So
she got real big. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm excited for my wife to go. I volunteered to watch the children so she could go with her sister. So
right. And of course, it would not truly be an Obama playlist if he didn't include an old song that doesn't have any new cultural cachet, but I guess he's just really into some random old song this year. Um, so which of these mid 80s songs by the former
jeez.
singer of a successful rock band did Obama include? Did he include Big Time by Peter Gabriel or If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free by Sting? Really no clue why either of these songs would. I mean, I know
Yeah,
both songs, but I would truly
yeah,
have
I'm
no
familiar
clue
with
why.
both.
Yeah.
Let's go with Big Time, like Peter Gabriel. I don't know. Like that's a complete
It
guess.
is it is If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free by Sting.
Okay, cool.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Like,
It's okay.
I mean,
Uh,
I was jamming some '80s, like more '80s pop, driving home from some stuff with my family tonight, and like when your son asks you to play Roxette, is how the playlist started. So that was how we started rolling on that. So
Dude,
I
you should
get
have
it.
said Roxette. Probably because I just referenced Sting. I just started saying Roxette to the tune of Roxanne.
Roxette.
Yeah. All right. In terms of slightly newer music, and I truly mean slightly, Obama represented the 1990s by selecting a number
Okay.
one hit from 1996, which featured
Okay.
the legendary Dr. Dre as a featured artist.
Okay.
I will let you know that both of these songs are number one hits from 1996 that feature Dr. Dre, so that part's not the trick.
Okay.
But did he pick No Diggity by Blackstreet or California Love by Tupac?
He's a Chicago guy, so he could really be on either side of the Biggie Tupac thing. But no diggity. That's got I don't know. They both got summer vibes, but based on the other songs, I'll I'll say he went Black Street. I'll say No Diggity.
You are correct.
Yeah. Got at least more than I missed. All right, let's go.
Yeah. And then this is the final one. So, of course, the true hallmark of a true Obama being a corny dad making playlists. If you didn't pick a song that you've heard 5 billion times, that's over half a century old, and that has over 700 million plays on Spotify, despite way predating the streaming era, what do we have here? Did he include Jimi Hendrix's version of All Along the Watchtower, or did he opt for I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones? Really introducing songs to a new generation here, because no one's ever heard these songs before.
Yeah, I mean, those are both. I mean, hey, if it's what he's listening to, I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing the classic hits sometimes. Don't know that you need to include it on the list. That well, why you have the list anyway, but whatever.
Well, sure, yes.
Oh, let's see.
Like, so he does add a comment with it, like, hope I can, show people this list and that they'll learn these new songs. And like, I can sort of see on some of the newer songs where maybe some of like the older people that follow him, maybe aren't familiar with Billie Eilish or like,
Yeah,
some of the other stuff on there. But
and I
I
don't
think
imagine
everyone's
there's
got.
too many teenagers following former President Obama. Um,
And if they are, and if they're the kind of person that's prone to care about this, they probably know these songs anyway because, like, I knew these songs when I was a teenager.
yeah, for sure. Oh man, I could so easily see either one of these. I'll say All Along the Watchtower. And
It
no, it's
is
not
I
a
can't
race
get no
thing.
satisfaction.
Dang
It
it!
is I can't get no satisfaction.
Now I just look racist. Thank you, John.
Well, I don't think either one's. I mean, he's half black and half white, so
That's fair.
it it's either one, and he is
But
fully a boomer. So
I'd like to
either
see his.
one.
I'd like to see his birth certificate. I'm kidding. That's
This would be a this would be an incredible turn of events if you start like venturing into Obama birth certificate conspiracy theories, like a full
uh,
8 years after he was last
say
president.
my. Trust me, while it was going on, I heard enough of it from my dear grandmother. Rest in peace. But
Yeah.
she politically, my grandmother was interesting.
I'm imagining a scenario where your grandmother believes that Obama was born in Africa, and therefore that's a good thing because we should have all of our presidents be from other countries.
I mean,
I
being
just
in
try
that,
to I kind of I to invent new characters. It's fun.
yeah, I mean, it's as long as it's respectful and like don't. But yeah, how do we
All right.
transition out of that?
Well, speaking of Barack Obama, he was the president in 2011 and some other years too. But he was the
He was.
president in
He
2011,
was. That's
and
not wrong.
2011 is when this draft happened. This draft that you won our pool game on, so you have the first pick in our
Yes.
draft.
I won the
And
pool
unless,
game. I picked the draft. It was.
yeah,
Oh,
and the thing is, this is a strong draft, though. I don't think that either of us is at a strong disadvantage because there's just a lot of depth here. Now, did we
yeah.
agree? I can't remember. Were we doing 7 picks each or 8 picks each?
7, I believe, is what we agreed to.
Okay, 7 works. Yep.
And I think, and I don't know how you feel, John. This is a draft where I think you could maybe make a case for at least 3 guys to go first overall in a redraft.
I think that if you really like just want to see me like be argumentative, I think you can make a case for like half a dozen guys. Like
I
it's
I think, yeah, 3 in my eyes have a stronger case than the others, but
sure.
so a
There
lot
are
of
some
this,
guys.
like, yeah, it's so hard because some of these guys, it's and I will say too, and I don't know, some of these, well, like really good. I was looking at some different stats on some of these guys, and like maybe some of them are a little overrated.
Hmm.
I'll get into that a little bit later when we get to people,
I,
but
I, I do think that there is like a pretty like kind of iconic group here. Not necessarily iconic because of like thinking of them being the 2011 draft. It's not like it's like the 2003 NBA draft where you think of, LeBron, Carmelo, Wayne Wade as like part of that draft as part of their identity. But like the 2009 and 2010 drafts especially were really weak. I think we as Rams fans have looked back on those drafts and been like, man, the Rams, their top two pick, they just didn't use it on like the most exciting player. And then you look at the guys they could have drafted, and it's like, I wouldn't have been that excited by these guys either, to be honest. So
yeah, I mean that's whereas this one, yeah, there's I mean, like we were saying, like the Rams and their pick, was one of a handful of guys to have a decent career, you know. Um, when you look at certain numbers, like we can get to him, but like especially in one particular statistic, like not super far behind. Like there's a lot of defensive end, linebacker, edge guys in this draft that are just
there are,
ridiculously
yeah.
good. Um, so and why not start there? I guess I was fighting back and forth a lot on this on which one to pick of two guys, and ultimately, what it ended up coming down to for me was one played just a tad longer. I mean, even was productive last year. Actually, had a decent up year or not, or 2 years ago. Last year he was nothing. But I'm going to take Von Miller at number one.
Okay, yeah.
Um, I was looking earlier at his Pro Football Focus rankings, like his ratings throughout the years. And I think, except for like last year and the year prior to that, and then the year he was injured, which I think was like he got hurt in 2019 and then didn't play in 2020, if I remember right, before coming back. The dude was like over a 90 like all those years in terms of a Pro Football Focus rating. 123 and a half sacks. Um, just one of the guys that, he was, I think, designated as a linebacker because we weren't really having this edge designation yet at the time.
Yeah.
But like this class is one of the ones that sort of really started to solidify that. And this was the dude who was like the first guy I remember just being like, line up in a 2 point stance, no hands down, and I'm just gonna run. If it's a third down passing down, like I'm getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, I would actually venture to say that Von Miller and the guy that I assume was the other guy that you were thinking about taking at one, because it sounded like you were kind of contemplating,
Yeah,
were kind of the two guys that like redefined like what it meant to be a
yeah,
modern pass rusher.
yeah. And it's funny because in different styles, like very different body types between the two of them. I think
Sure.
Miller a little smaller, more speed. Not to say the other guy's not fast, but he's bigger. Um, but you know, when you can just be that guy, he had 8 Pro Bowls, three AP first teams.
Yeah, he was truly dominant for a while, and like
Yeah,
especially with the Broncos Super Bowl team where like
yeah,
I kind of think it's one of those things where people have been prepared for like almost a decade now to kind of explain, yeah, I know it was Peyton Manning's last year, but actually it was the defense that carried them. But I think everyone's like been so pre-prepared for that no one's actually had to like jump to that. Everyone's like, yeah, Von Miller was amazing.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and of the two guys, he's the one that stayed healthier. He's the one that good for a longer period of time.
yeah, it's the consistency thing. The other guy, the highs were probably higher,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
but some other things in here. Obviously, 2 time Super Bowl champ. has a Super Bowl MVP as well um, under his belt, which as a defensive player to win Super Bowl MVP is, not the
Yeah.
easiest thing in the world.
They
Defensive
basically only
Rookie of the
they
Year.
basically only do that if the offense is just complete garbage, and even sometimes, like with the Patriots Rams one in 2019, they were like, I guess we'll give it to Amendola, whatever. But
Yeah, I mean yeah, or even at the offensive, like one offense, I guess has to be trash because like I don't know, I feel like the first defensive guy I remember when it was like Dexter Jackson and like the what was that the 2001
go
Super Bowl
two,
or 02?
go two,
Oh
oh
two,
three, yeah.
oh two or three, yeah. The when the Bucks
Then
just torched the Raiders.
yeah, and then Ray Lewis was the MVP a couple years before that. But yeah, for the most part,
Yeah,
you know, and it's the case now as was the case then. Usually they just go to the quarterback, and if the quarterback is a disaster, like it's like Ben Roethlisberger in the first Super Bowl that they won, and we'll just give MVP to Heinz Ward. That's good enough.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with a guy defensive rookie of the year. Uh, Never won a defensive player of the year, but did finish runner up twice. In in his second season, he was runner up for the defensive player of the year, and then again in 2016. You know,
Was he was he
he's
runner up? Was he runner up to another guy in this draft? I don't
in 20
remember.
in 2016. In 2012 it looks like he was runner up to him,
Okay.
and then let's see in
I think we're
2016.
being so evasive as though we're like talking about like some
Yeah,
obscure
it's
person.
and then Khalil Mack is actually who he lost to in 2016, and that
Yeah,
was
I mean Khalil
by
Mack also definitely part of the lineage of these types of guys too.
yeah, yeah, and Von Miller lost by 1 vote that year. The other year it was he just received 1 vote while every other one went to a guy that you very well may even be taking at the next pick. But
Oh, that's correct. Yes,
yeah,
that's we
okay.
don't have to pretend.
So like let's just stop beating around the bush and I'll just let you I mean, I think Von Miller speaks for himself and you can
Yeah,
get your guy. Oh,
I had
also he
Von
went
Miller.
second. He went second in the draft as well. So like appropriately drafted guy.
I had Von Miller number 2 on my list, behind the guy I'm about to take. It sounds like we had the same top two, but just flipped. I'm going with JJ Watt, 5-time first team All NFL, All Pro, I guess. Um, Received MVP votes one time, which is pretty rare for a defensive player. DPOY 3 times. Like you alluded to, just was a really dominant player. When he was dominant, like I think at this point is like who else would even be close for the greatest player in Houston Texans history? Like maybe Andre Johnson, but like I think it's I think
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
JJ by a fair amount at this point,
yeah.
and obviously a complete wrecking ball of a defensive player. Scored 3 touchdowns on offense during the brief time that they decided they were going to have him line up at tight end. He actually was recruited to college as a tight end. I believe I referenced the Watt family connections to my wife's family whenever we drafted T.J. Watt, so
Yeah.
I'll avoid that whole diatribe just so it doesn't get me on complaining about the name of the city Pewaukee again. But I am drinking a spotted cow in honor of the man that I knew was either going to be the number 1 overall pick or my number 1 pick. Yeah, I think Watt, not only for being such a great player, but also just kind of one of those like kind of franchise totem pole types guys. And I think that during his career, there were a lot of people who kind of would like give him a hard time for being like, because he did have kind of like a Mr. Perfect kind of like chisel jaw, smiling face kind of like role model type thing in a way that
Yeah.
I think people interpreted as corny, but I always interpreted that as like that's just who he is. And not that I think anyone's required to be that way, but like if you're just that guy and that's just kind of the way you go about your business, I'm not going to knock it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who, while he exuded that kind of stuff, it didn't seem like it could have been cheesy, but inauthentic, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I mean, a guy who he kind of went from nowhere, like he had 5.5 sacks his rookie year, and then the next year it's like, oh yeah, I'll just put up 20.5. That's fine.
Yeah,
Um,
I believe it was his rookie year that he had a pick six in the playoffs, and it was the Texans' first. It was either their first playoff game or their first playoff win, but I mean possibly both. But that was kind of, and it was kind of like his, oh, this guy's
yeah,
got something here, and he just continued to have that, and obviously dealt with a ton of injuries. Retired pretty young,
yeah.
um, but was just so good in his prime. And so Watt's the leader in the class. Actually, he's second in the class in
Oh,
weighted average.
weighted average.
But
Yeah,
I actually could see, since Von Miller is still playing, I could see him kind of sneaking past Watt. Like not that Miller's playing to the level he did years ago, but he's still
yeah,
you know a better than zero. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm
yeah,
comfortable with the peak of Watt. I think he's a guy who is gonna you know catapult into the Hall of Fame once he's eligible.
yeah. And I think and the crazy thing here is I think Watt is third in this class in sacks. Um,
Yeah, that's pretty weird. He's not that far ahead of number four either.
who is still
Is
active.
Oh, he
So
is still, yeah, huh?
so like and also, I mean, just a crazy thing. Obviously, we've alluded to Robert Quinn, but the fact that J.J. Watt only has 12 and a half more sacks than Robert Quinn, like that kind of.
Yeah, I will say, and this is not even a knock on Robert Quinn. Like Quinn's on my board. He could very well end up getting drafted here, but like Robert Quinn, I feel like sacks were kind of his thing. And like not that JJ Watt obviously wasn't getting sacks or anything, but he was just like a disruptive player.
Oh, yeah.
Like I mentioned with like interceptions, like he was, a threat to like intercept and like knock balls down and stuff that was,
Yeah.
rare because he was more of a conventional defensive end than like Von Miller, who was, listed as a linebacker. But like
Yeah.
he was kind of a linebacker playing defensive end. It wasn't
Yeah.
like he was, like Michael Strahan or somebody who, was a great
Right.
player, but was like very much a conventional, or like Reggie White, where they're awesome, but
Yeah.
they're very much just rushing the quarterback every single time.
Yeah. He's playing like, I mean, before this kind of edge game thing, like I always just kind of saw it's that 3-4 outside linebacker, kind of thing where you just,
Yeah.
teams were playing the big nose tackle, then a couple of bigger guys, and then you'd just bring the linebackers to rush. And yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
and Watt would play some linebacker, just like Miller would play some defensive end. Like you could
right.
put them in these things, and like having that versatility, being able to move around. Like these are both guys that I think we both think the world of these guys. These are guys who both should
Yeah.
be, Hall of Famers, no doubt.
Yeah, it's not even, a debate, I don't think. I mean, you look at this class, I think there's going to be quite a few Hall of Famers in this draft, I think,
Yeah.
Um, you know, ironically, I don't think, the weighted average number one guy is going to get into the Hall of Fame,
Probably not, but
but position has something to do with that as well. So,
I could make a case for him. I don't know that I would put him in either,
could.
but there's a case.
Well, there's a case. Again, I mean, I don't think it'll be very long till we get to him, but
Sure, yeah.
um, you know, but you know what? In fact, it's not going to be long at all. We're just going to dive into it. Um, I'm going to take Cam Newton at 3. So I've got the top 2 picks in the draft with my top 2 picks. Um,
You get the guy that Von Miller terrified during the Super Bowl where he got his MVP.
yeah, he again when the highs were high, like Cam Newton,
Oh God, yeah.
2015 Cam Newton, holy crap. MVP. I've also got the 2011 offensive and defensive rookie of the years on my team. Uh,
People who didn't watch Cam Newton are gonna look at the numbers and think this sounds like hyperbole. He might, at his absolute peak of powers, be the best quarterback I've ever seen. He was unreal. He was not at that
Yeah,
peak for nearly as long as you would like, but he was so good.
yeah, and I mean, to be fair, it's like we saw him in college play, obviously at Auburn, and that was, you know, you're like, holy cow, if this guy is even a semblance. Because like for me, I don't know, like maybe the only other college quarterback I'd seen do the kind of stuff he did at his size was like Vince Young, I would say. But he was bigger than
Yeah.
Vince Young. Like,
The only guy I
and
can think of really at any level that even like kind of gives off that vibe would be like what Josh Allen does now in the NFL, where it's just like
yeah,
huge. Because like there were guys like obviously like Michael Vick or somebody like that who was
right.
a dual threat quarterback. Michael Vick was like 6 foot even and pretty skinny. Cam Newton just like bowled over guys.
Yeah, 6'5", 245. I mean, he was, and ultimately, maybe that's what did him in, was his physical running style and
Sure.
things of that nature. A real roller coaster career, you know, 32,382 passing yards, 194 touchdowns, 123 picks. So not a great touchdown interception ratio. Um, threw
But also
interceptions on
he
2.7% of
was his
pass attempts.
he was his own red zone offense though. Like, let's be
Oh yeah, like he was.
like I would venture to say he is the quarterback that I want in the red zone more than any other quarterback ever.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
no because nobody else is going to like have that level of physical dominance. But like he can dominate you either way. It's not like he's guaranteed to run the ball up the middle because he also
yeah,
has an absolute rifle of an arm.
but arm, yeah. Well,
Yes.
and here's the crazy thing is he had, so in his career, you know, 11 seasons. Keep in mind, two of those seasons combined, he only started 10 games. But he has 75 career um, rushing touchdowns. So he averaged like 7 rushing touchdowns a year, essentially.
Yeah,
And,
that's number one in rushing touchdowns in this class, and there are like running backs who like could very well get picked here. It's not like there were no running backs, but
yeah, he was you know, a guy like you see it now. Because what the red zone offenses you had, like obviously Josh Allen, like you alluded to, he gets a ton. And then if it's short yardage, you just have, the tush push in Philadelphia. But
yeah, but that's less a matter of like Jalen Hurts being dominant and more a matter of frankly a guy who's probably going to get drafted pretty soon being dominant.
well,
But
yeah, I mean, but Jalen Hurts, his lower
I mean
bodies,
he's probably the closest thing to Cam Newton that there is in the NFL right
yeah,
now, with other than maybe Allen.
yeah, and but yeah, like you said though, it was like, I mean, if the guy honestly would have had like consistent receivers and offensive line around him, like how good would he have actually been? Um, you know,
So I actually have a comparison that I thought of for Cam Newton. Cam Newton as a pro kind of reminds me a little bit of Tim Tebow as a college quarterback. Because like I think that there is like this weird revisionism because people are always weird when it comes to Tebow, but like in college, like he wasn't the fastest guy, but he could just like run people over because he was like
yeah,
so built and so strong. And like, he had a strong arm. It was not a particularly accurate arm, but he could throw the ball deep. But like when you have guys like Percy Harvin, whenever you have
yeah,
guys like that one tight end that, but those types of guys, like that makes it work. But like Cam Newton didn't have receivers that like other than maybe like Greg Olson, but like he didn't have receivers that were that good in the NFL. And Tebow was doing in college. I think that if you had given him,
yeah,
like, if Kelvin Benjamin had worked out the way he was supposed to for the Panthers, like that could have
yeah.
been game
But yeah,
changer.
if you just think if he had, gotten to play with like the receivers that like Jake Delhomme was playing with, like if he had a prime Steve Smith and Musa Muhammad to throw to, holy cow.
Oh yeah,
Like
he
they
didn't,
were good with
he
they
didn't
were
even have a
good with
rookie
Jake
pro most of
Delhomme.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, so I think it's a case of the highs being high with Cam, but you know, you can say what you want to off the field. He's a weird dude or an interesting dude, I'll say.
I actually think weird dude is the right way to put it. Like,
Yeah,
because
and
like
that's
other than the whole like laptop incident at Florida and like all the like
yeah.
payment rumors at Auburn, which I don't consider like obviously it's against the rules, but I don't consider that to be like immoral in the way that stealing someone's laptop is. But like,
What-
I don't think he really had like a particularly checkered like legal record like in the NFL or anything. He was just kind of weird.
Yeah, he says some things a few times that he probably shouldn't have said at press conferences or whatever, but
Yeah,
Cam gonna Cam, and so yeah, I think that's probably enough on Cam, but
yeah.
taking him.
He will not be the only Cameron drafted in this draft. I can assure you that.
I I would hope not.
Yes. It will not be a Cameron going with the next pick, but still plenty of them lined up. I'll go with Jason Kelsey for the
Okay,
for my second pick.
gonna
You know,
get the
guys has the most AP first teams in the entire class with 6. You know, the sort of the spiritual leader behind the aforementioned tush push with Philadelphia. Obviously, just retired. He's going to end up being a Hall of Famer. It's kind of this weird thing where like the whole like Kelsey brother phenomenon is going to like make it like I can't tell if he's like overrated now or if he just like was a center and therefore was like definitionally underrated forever and then his like brother was like more famous for various reasons and then he got pushed up to being like properly acknowledged as like a star and like a truly like great player and also like he's like I feel like the whole and God, I probably should not be saying this on the internet, given we discussed fandoms earlier, but I think there are some people that are a little bit sour on Travis Kelsey. Not that they think he's like a horrible guy or anything, but that they think that he might be a little bit arrogant or whatever. Jason Kelsey just seems beloved. Philly fans just seem to love that guy, and all of his teammates seem to love him. And it seems like a guy that like it would be hard to imagine drafting a center 4th overall, but like he's I think if you're solidifying that position for 13 years, I guess, or 14, maybe 13 years, I guess, but yeah, a truly superior player who was drafted 191st overall. He is the lowest drafted player that I had any chance of drafting here, so good for him.
yeah. I mean, he's in terms of guys that I was really are looking at or had on my board. It's him and like one other late round guy, and the rest were
Yeah,
pretty much top 3 rounds. I think for the most part. Yeah, I mean Kelsey's a guy who it's so hard now to kind of look back because frankly, like he had a bunch of these all pros before he kind of blew up the podcast and um you know like you said he's beloved. I think his wife has become very beloved
oh
and
sure,
things
yeah,
like that. And I mean, they genuinely seem like nice people. He honestly seems a little insane to me, like in an endearing way, like the jumping out of the box without a shirt on, chugging beers, high five, and hugging people when Travis scored in the playoffs.
yeah, he's truly an offensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy, but I mean, you know, seems to be a good
Yeah,
dad and that's the thing. But yeah, on the field, um, an interesting thing for a guy who's still as highly regarded as him. According to Pro Football Focus and their um, offensive rankings, he was the ninth best center in the NFL this past season.
Which is interesting because like the whole Eagles, like the vibe around them this last year seemed like the one time the Eagles had bad vibes during his
yeah,
run. I guess
yeah,
that was
and
a
it
lot of that was
was
defensive though.
yeah. I mean, yeah, the defense was the big problem, and he's but I mean, he's a guy who consistently was kind of in that low to mid 80s in terms of like overall offensive PFF grade, which is like this past season. I think the top center was Detroit center, who finished at 88.8 by their rankings. Um, but it's he's a guy who, I don't look at centers and offensive linemen enough in terms of knowing who is the best one or like
You say that, and yet this is the rare time that I actually jumped on the offensive lineman on one of these drafts because usually you're the one that's
it's
just
true.
drafting all of them.
It's true, but like, he's a guy who, and I think it's a fair thing you can say with a lot of guys, like, unless you're really terrible, if you build up a reputation, like, you can easily accumulate a lot of those, AP number one, if you've proven yourself and you kind of get that reputation. Um, but I don't think he's bad. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think in terms of value pick, he's the best value pick that anybody got in this draft. Um, obviously at 191. And yeah, I mean, I think he's, he may be, well, not maybe, he's definitely the most popular, like, or well-known person in this draft, I would say. Um, in overall terms.
There's another guy in this draft that like maybe his stars diminished from like his peak level of being famous, but there was another guy in here that was quite a big deal for a little
Well, yeah,
while. But
yeah, but I think it maybe, I mean, at this exact moment right now, like, I mean, they're trying to, maybe one day their podcast will reach as many people as Draft Day does. I really hope that for them. Maybe
maybe,
they can really take it to new heights.
yeah. Hey, that's the name of the podcast.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm glad that we're referencing it. It's good to give other up and coming podcasts a little bit of a
Yeah,
bump. I've admittedly never listened to a single episode of it, but
yeah. I've seen
you know,
clips, that make their way in like the shorts and stuff, but it's not my
oh yeah,
vibe.
yeah. Last season during the whole Taylor Swift at Chiefs games phenomenon, that was just every single week, every episode was like we got to do a whole like breakdown of every clip, and
Yeah,
I just kind of saw the runoff and I was like, okay, that's fine. I hope they're having a good
yeah,
time. I don't need to see all these.
yeah. I mean, I feel like most of the
Nothing
clips I
personal,
saw,
guys, but yeah.
yeah, it's like whenever like Jason's daughters would like come in and like say hi to Uncle Travie and stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's cute and adorable. Like, I like kids, so that's fun to see that. You know, they they're brothers that seem to get along, and the kids like their uncle. Like, that's good that Travis Kelsey doesn't seem to be a douchebag to his nieces, so that's cool. But
Sure.
I mean, it's you know, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I think it's just a little too broy for me. But
Well, yes, that's
I I mean, I'll never forget. I was at the aquarium here, and there was a guy who was wearing a New Height shirt, and I'm like, I feel like I'm judging you very hard right now, but am I wrong? Am I wrong?
yeah. I don't really see a lot of people wearing draft day merch around here. It's
Yeah, not even the Kevin
real
Costner film.
oversight. Yeah, I guess I saw Frank Langella wearing it one time.
I mean, the man, the myth, the legend.
All right, you're up.
All right, I'm up. You know, why not keep the train rolling of Camerons? I'll take our second Cameron. Probably won't be the last one still
Sure
in
won't
this
be.
draft. But I will take the guy who is second in sacks in this draft. Maybe soon to be first, he could overtake it. Cameron Jordan.
Yep.
Like a guy who, like, if you follow the NFL, you know who he is, but like even then, I'm like, is this guy really like? Does he get enough credit for how good he is?
He's a little bit more of a slow burn type of guy as opposed to Von Miller
Yeah,
or J.J. Watt.
yeah, he's never had more than 15 and a half sacks in a season, but he has what, one, two, three, four, five, six. So like half his career, he has double-digit sacks, and a lot of those other years are like 7.5 to 8.5. So only had two last season, so maybe he is starting to slow down. Probably not playing as many snaps as he once did. Um, 8-time Pro Bowler, only a one-time All Pro. But a lot of that could also do with the fact that he also had to go up against Von Miller and J.J. Watt for All Pro spots.
Perhaps.
So it's like,
It was two-time second team, though.
yeah, yeah, 2-time second team. Finished fourth in 2017 in Defensive Player of the Year voting, which really in the NFL, like, he's this is weird because I'm saying, so the year that he got it, he was up against, so Aaron Donald won. Aaron Donald's listed here as a right defensive end. It's a D tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's another one of those guys that they would move to the outside sometimes, but certainly I think of more as a defensive tackle.
Yeah. But regardless, it's like, again, he has 117 and a half sacks. Obviously that's regular season stats. Does have 5.5 sacks in the playoffs as well. Unfortunately, he's, been with New Orleans, kind of post them being good.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously missed out on being on the Super Bowl team, and New Orleans was, consistently like pretty good during a lot of this time, and I guess would have been a rookie for the bounty season. That was 2011, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was, the 24th pick, so obviously he was playing, but probably not. He was not like the ringmaster behind it.
Yeah.
That would be Truman State legend Greg Williams.
Yes. Good old Greg. Rams coaching legend.
We
But
use the word legend around here very interestingly.
we do.
Like
I mean,
we're like the equivalent of like Zoomers who refer to like everything as iconic. You ever notice that?
yeah.
That's a thing that I find very annoying is that people are like, oh, like this song is pretty good and therefore it's iconic. It's like, well, settle down. Like there's
Yeah. I mean, like, Greg Williams is iconic, but not everyone
yes,
is.
yes, he's iconic in a way.
I mean, maybe not for the right reasons. To be fair, in terms of like Truman State alum, he's probably pretty iconic because
Yeah, I mean he's iconic much in the way that like the film The Room is iconic.
that that movie sure exists. Um, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But Cameron Jordan, he's just like, like I said, Silver. Like, dude's just a good player. Like, there's
Yeah.
not a ton else to go. I could throw out. He's got a weighted average. He's one less than Von Miller in terms of weighted average,
Yeah, pretty good.
but has a higher. If you look at the, I think it's interesting. One of the stats they give is the like directly related your weighted average to the team that drafted you, and he hasn't moved. He's still with the Saints, so has the exact same number. Whereas, you know, obviously that's not necessarily a consideration we take into the draft. We're just looking at the players and the statistics. But if you're a team that's drafting him and you can keep a guy who's got 117 and a half sacks over a 12-year career and they're all for you, okay, you'll take that.
It could be worse.
So, yeah.
All right. With my third pick, and there's still a lot of good players on
I
here.
know it's
Uh,
like
I'm gonna go with pick number 154. I'm gonna go with Richard
gonna take
Sherman.
Sherman. Yeah,
Sherman was a player that, as a Rams fan, drove me nuts because, he was
I
very much a
but
love him if he's on your team, hate him if he's on another team kind of
yeah,
guy.
but John, did you know that he went to Stanford?
You know that he was a receiver at Stanford. That got a weirdly high amount of attention all the time. But
Ah,
3 times first team All Pro, 2 times second team. Oddly, those were his only Pro Bowl seasons, which I found surprising. But he got some DPOY votes in there. Um, 37 career interceptions, which is the lead in this class by 1. But something.
yeah,
Just really was. He does seem like a guy who had a lot of kind of like the intangible like leadership kind of qualities, and like you can make a case for other guys on that Seattle defense being like better. You could argue Bobby Wagner, or,
yeah.
Cam Chancellor, or
Cam
something
Chancellor.
like
Yeah,
that. But I think that Sherman was really kind of the heart and soul of like the early iteration of that. I mean, you could argue that he did not have quite the longevity of even like a different cornerback in this draft that is still on the board. But I
yeah,
think that in terms of his prime years, if you're drafting a cornerback, you're probably not trying to draft a cornerback who's going to be awesome at like 35. You're just trying to find somebody who is going to like bring it right then and there. And Richard Sherman was really good, and much like Von Miller was part of the leadership that got the Broncos a Super Bowl victory. They had to lose in the Super Bowl first, and it was to Richard Sherman and the Seattle Seahawks in
well,
what I still think is the most boring Super Bowl I've ever seen. But
it was pretty terrible.
I'm sure the Seattle players enjoyed it. As somebody that didn't care that deeply who won, and if anything was rooting for Denver, did not necessarily entertain me. But um, can't blame a guy for playing well. So
Yeah,
yeah, Richard Sherman as the number 6 pick.
yeah. I mean, Sherman's. I had him in this range in terms of thing, and it's cornerbacks. It's always a really really interesting statistically to look at them, and I'm too cheap. I didn't jump. I haven't paid for Pro Football Focus Plus, but like thing you have to remember. Oh, guys that are regarded as some of the best corners in the league. Oh, they might not have that many interceptions and these type of things. It's because they don't get thrown on either. Like,
Yeah, it's the Revis Island principle.
yeah, it's and this is a guy, obviously we saw plenty of, and he was in that, Legion of Boom. Because that was the thing too.
Yeah,
Like he could cover, but then he'd also knock your head off too. Like,
yeah, he was like he didn't play safety that long, but he like was always an inevitable like this guy's going to be just fine once he loses a step. And you actually would have thought he had a longer career, but maybe like how physically he played a role in that. But
yeah, yeah, no,
and
I
like
mean, and
whenever I was referencing with Jason Kelsey, like a player being like an iconic, like visible player, like Richard Sherman was a big deal at the peak of his prime. Like he was on the cover of Madden for a reason. Like he was
yeah,
the kind of guy you could put on your cover and convince yourself it was going to sell games, because that was a thing that for some reason video game creators have always believed, is that the cover athlete is a huge um mover and shaker.
yeah. I mean, it's to be fair, if Madden wanted to really sell, they would put Taylor Swift on the cover of it in Chiefs gear, and then they would just
Okay.
sell all the games.
So I briefly thought for a second, I don't know who's on the Madden this year. I do know who's on the Madden this year, and it's not that. I was kind of concerned though.
Yeah, say
It's
it's
Christian McCaffrey.
CMC, right? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Which good pick in terms of guys, I guess.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Number one fantasy pick, probably. For most leagues, I'd assume. But yeah, Richard Sherman. I promise I'm not doing this just piggybacking off you here, but the aforementioned cornerback, I'm going to go ahead and take him next.
Yeah.
Not necessarily as good in coverage, but he brings a versatility in another aspect that you don't get
Yes, he does.
at an elite level, and that's Patrick Peterson's who I'm going to take.
Yeah,
A
I
guy,
had them. I had them right by each other on the board. It was really like 6 of one,
yeah,
half dozen of the other.
a guy who has 3 All Pros, only 2 of them as a defensive back. His rookie year, he was a first team All Pro punt returner.
Sure,
Which, hey, it still counts as an All Pro. 8
he's a
Pro
regular David
Bowls.
Putney.
You know, he's no Devin Hester, but uh, 8 3-time All Pro and 8-time Pro Bowler. Other than that, doesn't have a lot of necessarily the accolades. Some of these, another guy that we saw plenty of as Rams fans in this time,
Yes,
playing in Arizona.
he had I believe it was a walk-off punt return against the Rams. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah,
He definitely
I
had an
believe so.
overtime victory against them. I'm not. That's my
Yeah,
memory of it, at least.
I believe it was a walk off, but
Yeah,
a guy who you know obviously not a bad cornerback because obviously 2 first team All Pros at a position where the elite guys are usually pretty elite, and he was playing in the Revis Island era, where that was going to be one of the spots probably for a
Richard
lot of
Sherman also
years.
competing for the
And Richard
spots. Yeah,
Sherman also playing, so it's like, and not any second teams, which it's like, okay, but I think he's a guy that when he was at the top, he was really at the top kind of thing. And then, like, again, not a bad corner, just one fewer interception than um, Richard Sherman. And this is a dude who still played 17 games and started 16 last year for Pittsburgh. So, like,
it's wild.
which to be a cornerback at, 33 is what he would have been last year and starting.
And a cornerback whose whole thing was speed, like even by the standards of cornerbacks. But
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, it's, he had 2 interceptions last year, 11 pass defenses. I mean, it's, he's a good tackler too. I mean, I think that's something maybe in his game that you don't necessarily think about with him, but like another guy like Sherman, physical, like had the speed, but he would also, especially you'd see it on punt returns, bro would lower his head, and if he wasn't going to outrun you, he could run you over too. Like he wasn't 6'1", 203, so pretty stereotypical corner size, I guess I'd say, from
yeah,
that perspective. Yeah, just another good NFC West solid corner. Um, and a guy who was taken 5th overall, so I've taken 1, 2, and 5 are on my team, so a little bit of chalk, whereas you got the 2 late round steals on your team. But we're happy to have him, even though his name's not Cam or Cameron. So
it's true. There's plenty more opportunities to draft Cams and Camerons. I mean, plenty being relative. There's at least one more opportunity.
one.
Especially because I'm not going to take that one with my next pick, so you can do it with your next pick if you want. I am going to go with, from the 8th overall pick, I'm going to go with the guy that was the 6th overall pick in the draft. I'll go with Julio Jones. He was, for a while, one of the best receivers in the NFL. He was,
When he was good, he was good.
yeah, 2-time All-Pro first team, 3-time second team. Just such an athletic, such a fun player to watch, and 66 receiving touchdowns, which is actually not number 1 in the draft class, but I think he was a little bit more of like smaller being relative. He was not like a small guy, but whereas the other guy was a little bit more of like an end zone threat, like almost like a tight end type of role. This was a guy who just like really spread the field, and for those Falcons teams, which, yeah, I know the whole they blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, all that stuff, but like that Falcons offense was like high octane, and they were really good when they drafted him too, and like they moved up a ton to get
They moved
him.
way up.
I remember at the time people just thought it was like completely insane that they had moved so much
Yeah.
because they already had Roddy White, who was a really good wide receiver in his own right, and once Julio got out there, and like Julio was a good college player too, so it's not like it was a surprise that he was good in the pros, but like once he got out there, it was just like unbelievable. He was just so like that offense just really clicked with him. Like obviously he kind of eventually started to did the bounce around, but like those Falcons years will always be what I remember about him. He also got Offensive Player of the Year votes, which as a receiver is not a thing that I usually think of as being
Yeah.
common. So yeah, Julio it is.
Yeah. I mean, he has receiving, like his highest receiving year. The year he had 1,871 receiving yards. Like,
That's so many receiving yards.
that's a lot. And he had another one of 1,677. He had one of 1,593. Two
Yeah.
others over 1,400. Like, and then he just fell off a cliff. That's what's so weird with him. It's like
Yeah.
he hit 30 and then just
Yeah.
there you go.
Like not everyone can be Jerry Rice. Like not everyone
Yeah.
can like sustain that well into your 30s.
Yeah, and he was a guy that, when I think of him, like I'll be honest, I don't know how his route running was, but like he was one of these like freak of nature athletes. Like throw the
Yeah.
ball, he's either gonna run past the guy to get under it, or he'll just out jump you to also get it. Like, a guy who could, do it a little bit of everything, but he yeah, I had him a little bit lower just from the longevity standpoint. Been really sad. I've really honestly been rooting for him these last few years as he's kind of getting the bounce around. I'm like, man, I wish he would be able to catch fire again, but I guess it's just not there. Um,
Yeah, whenever there's a guy that I remember, and like I've mentioned before that like my football watching has fallen off quite a bit, and like I know all the quarterbacks, but like receivers, I'm generally not as versed in other than like the top guys. Like whenever I see a guy that like I vividly remember being like a good fantasy receiver, who's still doing it, like anytime Keenan Allen comes up, I'm just like, that's right, there
dude,
you go, Keenan.
Keenan Allen balled out and helped me win my fantasy league last year. So, but yeah, but an interesting thing on him though too, like only 66 touchdowns in his career.
Yeah, that is like I'm not. If you had asked me whether him or the other top receiver from this class had been, I guess I wouldn't have been shocked that it was the other guy. But still, like,
Yeah,
what's weird is
like
that the other receiver I actually remember being like, he was like the guy for the first couple of years after they got drafted. That was
yeah,
like the big icon, and then he kind of not that he was bad for the rest of his career. Like he is going to end up getting drafted eventually, I'm sure. But
probably yeah,
I think, yeah, I think that Julio became like the guy because he was really like the guy in the NFL for a
right.
while.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, kind of crazy that a guy who has 1,871 receiving yards ends with 8 touchdowns in that season. Seems just low to me. But
I think if you're going to score
like,
that few touchdowns with that many yards, you must have Cam Newton as your quarterback. I know he didn't, but that feels like that's what it should be.
yeah, so that would have been what Matty Ice, right? Like,
I think so. Yeah, I think that's
in,
when he was getting
in,
the.
in 2015. Yeah,
Yeah, that was still Matt Ryan. And the next year was the Matt Ryan MVP year.
yeah. So
Julio probably helped that out.
I would assume so. But yeah, no, I like the pick. He's a solid dude.
All right, you're up.
It's where it gets interesting for me.
Is he going to draft a third Cam?
It certainly wouldn't be an insane pick right now, but gonna do something. This might be a little bit of a reach, but I do have a brand to uphold, as you called out when talking about Jason Kelsey. So I'm gonna take the number 9 overall pick. I'll
Okay,
take
yeah,
Tyron Smith.
yeah,
Um,
good choice.
you know, put it this way: the guy's an offensive tackle whose name I know.
And wasn't a Ram. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and now, granted, playing his entire career for Dallas, I believe he's on the Jets now, um, for this upcoming season.
but
But
certainly made
prior to
his
that,
name with Dallas.
yeah, and so this is a guy. So two AP first teams, two AP second teams, um, at left tackle, which is, I mean, pretty impressive if you're being seen as one of the top two left tackles in the game any year. Um, a guy who, unfortunately, in some regards, the injury bugs hit him 2 seasons where he's only had 2 and 4 games played, respectively. Um, hasn't played more than 13 games in a year actually since 26 or since 2015. So
Uh-huh.
he's missing games. I think when you look at his weighted average, he's down a little bit, and I think that's maybe the reason why is just not playing enough, and then you have to look relative. He also plays with just when you look at a lot of his starts, like when you look at weighted average and the difference you make to the team, like he also has like Zach Martin that he was playing with for quite a few of those years.
Yeah, he was taking some of the weighted average.
And but yeah, I mean, a guy who just he grades out well with Pro Football Focus, and I mean, just when it comes to offensive linemen, it's hard to give stats, but a guy who's, I mean, you know, guy who
I
grew up
co-sign your
like,
pick. I
yeah,
will
I
give
mean,
you the eye test.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like when I think of, like, to me, like the peak tackle in my mind is always going to be like prime Orlando Pace. That's
yeah, like
as a
maybe
Rams
Ogden.
fan. Yeah, Jonathan Ogden. I mean, there's other guys that are definitely like in the that are probably better than Pace, but like guys who just like you see dominate, and that's that whole protecting the blind side of a right-handed quarterback. mm, as a left tackle. The And no, I don't want to make reference to the Michael Oher movie, The Blind Side. Um,
That movie was only like a year old when this draft happened.
and
It's actually a pretty fresh reference at this point.
Sandra Bullock won Best Actress for that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, she did. I don't remember who else was nominated that year, but that was felt like a real career achievement award.
Yeah, we can maybe if we do enough drafts, we'll do a like worst winners draft. Be between her
Like
and
bizarro
Crash.
Oscar draft.
Yeah,
Yeah.
her
Well,
and
she's in
Crash would.
Crash, so it would really be
She is
a
in Crash.
big Sandra
It's-
Bullock hours here.
yeah. We love you, Sandy, if you're listening.
That,
Um,
that said, Speed should have won every Oscar. Granted, it was
um,
1994, so it's a pretty strong Oscar year, but
Miss Congeniality was robbed. There, I said it.
yeah, William Shatner should have gotten Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah. That or Michael Caine. Sorry, Michael Caine. Michael Caine. But anyway,
So I
why
guess
don't
the
you just go
first
ahead and
Michael
pick? I probably
would
need.
have gotten.
I think I probably need to stop talking for a minute after that one.
All right. So we've taken 9 of my top 10 guys on my board have been taken. So I guess I'll take the other one and make it the even top 10. I have to fill my Cameron quota. So I will take Cameron Hayward, um, 3-time first team all pro. Kind of, I actually had him and Cameron Jordan right next to each other on my board. I had Cameron Jordan, I guess, a little bit lower than you did. But, I think Hayward may have had even like a little bit higher of a peak, but maybe not as long term of a player. But still, 6 Pro Bowls, 80 and a half sacks, which seemed like surprisingly low to me.
Yeah,
I guess he's more of just sort of a line disruptor rather than necessarily a sack artist. He
yeah,
is, of course, the son of a St. Louis Rams legend, the late Craig Ironhead Hayward. who is one of the most quietly influential athletes of all time because he is basically the guy that got guys to start using loofahs. He was big on that train in the 90s, which is an actual thing. I swear I'm not just making up.
No, it's not.
Yeah, but Cameron, quite good. I believe so. He went to okay. So his dad played at Pitt, but he played at Ohio State. I was going to try to make some
Yeah.
sort of like Pitt to Pittsburgh connection thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless, really good player, and like I said, my top 10 guys are now the top 10. You know, order's different, but we got the top 10 picks right in some order or another. So
Yeah.
I'm proud of us.
Yeah. I think it's a like for me, and I don't know how you feel overall. This is kind of where I feel like there's a slight drop off, maybe kind of that next
Like,
tier.
it's a slight drop off, but there's still some really good players out there. It's just no
Yeah.
longer like guys that could really make like realistic Hall of Fame cases for, basically.
Yeah. And it's, you know, but yeah, I mean, Cameron Hayward, it's steady.
Yeah,
He reflects his head coach a lot, I think, just in terms of, you know, production, in terms of like how Mike Tomlin is, at the end of the year, you're probably going to have a winning record. And you're going to look back like, yeah, that's pretty good. Kind of how Cameron Hayward has been, you know.
all
And I
right.
think another guy who entire career with one team, right? Just been drafted by Pitt,
I
stayed with them.
think so. I don't remember him playing elsewhere, but I'm also not the best witness on these matters.
So can confirm he
Nice.
has not played elsewhere.
All right. If you've recovered from your Sandra Bullock related outburst, you may go
Yeah.
next.
Yes. Mr. Kane is now gone. So how crazy do I want to get here? I'll stay on the receiver train. I'll take AJ Green next.
Yeah, he was next on my board. I think that's the right pick.
Yeah, it's a a guy who went I think him going at 4, I think it was part of the reason Atlanta trading up. I know, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think we were partially being like trade up and get Julio as well, like for the Rams.
Yeah, I remember a friend of ours in particular was really big on the trade up and get Julio train. I think AJ Green was probably considered like maybe it would be unrealistic to get him because I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was like pinpointed to go to the Bengals like the entire time.
Yeah, it was, and then obviously Cincinnati got the other part of that duo in the second round. Ted
Yeah,
might not spoil it.
heck of a draft by Cincinnati. You got
Yeah,
like
your
granted
top
those
two
guys didn't really
picks.
like do anything major, like, but they were
Yeah,
like the Bengals the previous decade were like consistently like a joke, and then
yeah,
they got a stud wide receiver and granted they'd had good receivers with Chad Johnson / Ojo Cinco, TJ Hushmanzada, but like AJ was really where they like he reached levels that those guys didn't.
yeah,
As good as Chad Johnson was, he there was no point that I was like he's maybe the best receiver in the NFL, and it's so crazy that a guy that I could conceivably have said that about is the number 11 pick here. But like I said, this is a good draft.
yeah. It's insanely good, and he's a guy who came right out of the gate. Um, he's got 7-time Pro Bowl, 2-time AP second team, and those Pro Bowls were actually all of his first 7 years.
Yeah,
Um,
that checks
another one of
out. Like,
these guys who hit 30 and kind of, well, he got hurt in the season he turned 30, and he had to miss
yeah,
that season and the next one, and after that just kind of
was never the same. Yeah.
same. But like, in his career ended in 2022. He didn't play last year. I forgot about the 2 years he had in Arizona, which he was on a bad Arizona team those 2 years.
Yeah, I very vaguely remember those years, but yeah, definitely. He was just taking whatever job he could get, but he was
Yeah.
so like there was a point in time, maybe like 5 years after this draft, like where you could have like he would realistically be fighting for the number one overall pick, even though like J.J. Watt and Von Miller were
Yeah.
like awesome already. It would not have been absurd to pick him.
Yeah, it was interesting. In the limited research I was doing, I came across it was a 2014 article of redrafting the top 20 picks of this draft. I think it was like Gil Brand at NFL.com who did it or something. And it was an interesting one to look at. Like he had Von Miller like 14 3 years into his
Huh.
career because he was like he's
He was a little bit of a
undersized.
slow. He was a little bit of a slow starter. I mean, he should have been
Yeah,
higher than 14 even then, but like,
yeah, but he was all about like his size and that was the one really interesting one I remember. But it's like, yeah, I mean, because a guy who probably won't get drafted here actually has been the highest. I was looking at a Pro Football Focus article um, of like teams' highest PFF rookie performer, like by their grades since 2006. There were two from this draft class um, in terms of that, and I believe it was San Francisco's pick. So obviously close to our hearts, that guy, and
yeah.
then Alden Smith, that guy. Which, to be fair, his rookie year was phenomenal. And
Yeah,
then,
Alden Smith is deep on my board, but he was sensational when he first got in the league,
oh
and
man, it was
then things went sideways. But
yeah,
yeah,
he was
extremely
insane.
good.
Yeah, and I think the other one was Von Miller. So like, but part of that problem is like I think the reason like AJ Green probably wasn't the highest as well. Like, well, Joe Burrow's in there and things of that nature. Or
Jamar Chase probably be up there too.
Jamar Chase. It's and that's the thing. AJ Green. When you look at his career, you really want to look at those first 7 years, and there's only one of those seasons that he did not reach 1,000 yards. Um, and that was when he got 964 yards in 10 games. So who knows what he would have had that season if he stayed healthy. That was the other thing
Yeah,
that bit him. He had the injury bug and he had it pretty bad.
yeah. This is so. We can kind of recap it a little bit more later, but this draft, like the top guys mostly were really good.
Yeah.
So each of the top six guys in the draft got drafted except for one, who I'm not going to mention because like he was a Pro Bowler who could conceivably still get drafted.
Yeah, considerably can still be
Um,
drafted.
Number 9 was a Pro Bowler. Number 11 was a Pro Bowler. Numbers 8, 10, and 12 were all quarterbacks who were various levels of mediocre to bad, but they were there. So I really believed in Jake Locker. My
Yeah.
reasoning behind being suspicious of Cam Newton is so stupid in retrospect, which is just thinking he was so physically dominant that like, well, he clearly can't do this in the NFL. Like, yeah, I hate to have a physically dominant player. What a moron I am.
Yeah, that was yeah. And as much as we wanted Blaine Gabbert to be good with our hearts, he just
Well, I was never sold on Gabbert, but
oh, me neither. He wasn't. I mean, to be fair, like Missouri just had a ridiculous receiver room for him in college. Like,
yeah. Shout out to him following the Chase Daniel path of making a ton of money and winning Super Bowls as a backup quarterback, though.
yeah, I mean,
Probably a
it's,
good guy, just based on the fact that I actually have a coworker who obviously is quite a bit older than us, but actually coached him in Little League.
okay.
Good kid. So
Yeah,
that's my inside
good.
knowledge there.
So yeah, good St. Louis boy, Parkway West. Right?
Yep.
I actually remember driving out when my high school was not playing, like, but I drove out to a Parkway West game just so I could see him play in college because he was so highly touted. And
In high school, I
I'm
mean.
I'm I'm gonna have to do that this year with the offensive tackle kid in Nixa, who's like a top 5 recruit in the nation for 2025 or 6. But
Hmm. Was not aware of that being a thing, but cool.
Jackson Cantwell, 2026 offensive tackle. He is currently nationally ranked number 4 and is the number 1 tackle in the class of 2026. So,
Bad, not bad at all.
yeah, according to
All right,
247. But anyway,
yeah. I will go with for the number 12 pick. Man, there are still very draftable players
oh
out
yeah,
there. I will go with Justin Houston,
okay,
number 12. Got an all NFL in there, 4-time Pro Bowler, 112 career sacks, which is I believe 4th in this class. And the other guys who were ahead of him all got drafted already. But yeah, just a really like consistently good kind of like fits that like linebacker slash pass rushing like edge rusher kind of thing that you mentioned. You know, there's really no conceivable argument for arguing Justin Houston is like quite in the Von Miller class, but he is sort of, I think, a nice like store brand version of that if you can get it at this point in the draft. Um, yeah, there's a few other guys who are similar types of players that are maybe just like slightly behind in terms of like weighted average and things like that. But yeah, I'll go with Houston. The guy that I have behind him, which I'm not going to give away, but it's like similar type of role, but like you could really kind of flip a coin on it. But I'll go with
yeah,
Houston.
yeah. I mean, a guy who, I mean, the year he was an AP first teamer had 22 sacks.
Yeah,
Like
that's
pretty
pretty
good,
good.
pretty good. A guy who,
I actually forgotten that he had that many sacks in a season. Like
yeah,
that's wild.
it was crazy because there was a time where, living in a lot of Chiefs areas, like he's a jersey that popped up a lot. Like obviously you had more like defensively, it was pretty much him and Derek Thomas. I feel like is mostly like what you had in terms of like jerseys. You
Yeah.
know, obviously now you get a lot of 15s and deservedly so. Um, but
Does like Chris Jones have a presence there as far as defensive players?
yeah, I mean, probably
Probably
more
decently
recently.
behind Mahomes and Kelsey, but
Yeah, I think Chris Jones is a big one. I think, the defensive back has been creeping up some. The guy
I would
that,
know it if you said the name, but I'm never gonna come up with it. But yeah,
yeah,
I would know
the
it if
only
you
one I
said
can
it.
think of is the guy they took first over or their first round pick, and it's not McDuffie, which he's pretty good too, but it wasn't McDuffie. Doesn't matter. Neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, Justin Houston's another good edge rusher. I mean, there's plenty to choose from in this draft. Um,
Yes, there are.
a guy who I don't know if he's signed to a team right now or not.
He is listed as a free agent currently.
Okay, yeah. Um, was on a couple of teams last year.
Yeah,
Didn't
he's kind
name
of
play
bounced
for one of
around
them.
more than I remembered. Yeah, because I pretty much only associate him with the Chiefs, but
Yeah,
had a couple good years with Indianapolis, and apparently started 7 games for the Panthers last year. Can't say I was watching a lot of Panthers games, so
yeah,
just to that one.
yeah. So,
They were in the number 1 pick. I'm sure they drafted somebody great with it.
ooh.
Caleb Williams is going to be really good, and it's going to be so funny.
Yeah, I know I don't know. I feel like I'm being silly with like Caleb Williams is gonna bust, but like part of me is like, uh, I just want him to because of honestly maybe more his dad than anything. Because I find his dad annoying. I don't think he himself is really all that annoying, but yeah,
I'm sure like Lonzo Ball feels a lot of empathy with people rooting against this totally decent guy for his dad, and I
big
get
baller
it.
maybe. Yeah, I mean, all right. So who do I want to go with my last pick? Who do I want to do? Do I want to get a little crazy? Do I want to go a little different? I think I'm actually going to go a guy that I don't even have necessarily as high, but go to a position we haven't talked about for a guy who honestly I don't remember like him being necessarily like as good as he was like statistically. I'm gonna go, to the a part of the Alabama to NFL running backs. Um, I'm gonna take Mark Ingram with my last pick,
Interesting. Okay.
just to draft a running back. Do I think
He was
he's
probably
in the top
he was the
14? No. He's the best running back
he
in
was
the
the best
draft.
of those Alabama running backs. I don't. So he was better than Trent Richardson. He was better than Eddie Lacy. He was not my top running back in this draft, but
Oh, really? You were,
I
oh,
had
okay.
I had DeMarco Murray ahead of him. I'm not
Murray.
taking DeMarco Murray with my pick, but
Yeah.
regardless, though, like
Murray had the one all pro season, I believe.
yeah, he
But
was
like,
very much a uh, came in, set the league on fire, and then did not last very long.
in
Kind
the
of a
deep,
glorified Eddie Lacy in some ways.
yeah, but the reason he got bad wasn't because he got fat.
His way out of the league, yeah.
Um, Defenses just learned how to defend against DeMarco Murray, basically. Um, but yeah, Ingram was a guy who, 3 Pro Bowls.
Yeah, he
He
was a good player.
multiple thousand-yard rushing seasons. Underrated pass catcher too. Had let's see, what did he have in terms of receiving? Where's the yardage? There it is. 2,100 receiving yards. So never a huge pass catching threat, but 10 receiving touchdowns.
He was he was definitely part of like their game, and like a
Yeah.
take that I just kind of thought of off the top of my head is that he's a little bit of like what Reggie Bush was supposed to be, where he was like for the Saints specifically, and like
Yeah.
Reggie Bush eventually kind of became that guy, but like with other teams, and like he just never reached like the star level that people expected when like he was like expected to go first overall for most of that draft season. We'll have to do that draft at some point. 2006
Oh,
is
100%.
a wild one.
I think
Yeah,
that was the other one I had suggested for this one. I believe it was one of those, but
he's going with
um,
years the Cardinals won the World Series.
yeah, pretty much. No, but a guy who, Ingram different than those other Alabama running backs we talked about too. He's 5'9", like he's a little dude,
Yeah,
but was like a bowling ball. He's like 215 or something, I think, and just he just a hard nosed runner, not the fastest guy, but there's something to be said when you can play 11 parts of 11, 12 years in the league. Uh,
yeah.
over 8,000 rushing yards. So over 10,000 total yards in from scrimmage. Um, if I'm truly in the spirit of a lot of our drafts, if I'm taking the best player and everything, like, am I taking him? Probably not. But he's just a guy that I felt like giving a shout out to with my last pick. We haven't
Sure.
talked
Yeah.
about any running backs. It's a very good draft for a lot of other positions. So
Yeah, I do want to note because I mentioned all these Alabama running backs that didn't do anything. I do realize that Derrick Henry's the guy like right after the era that I listed, but
yeah,
I decided to arbitrarily end the cutoff there.
yeah.
Just so someone doesn't think I'm a complete moron, but
Well, yeah,
only somewhat of a moron.
yeah. When you said it, I was like, in my head, I'm like, well, Derrick Henry's probably the best of them, but
Yes, he is, but all right. So with the number 14 overall pick, I am going to go with the number 14 overall pick. I am going with the St. Louis Rams pick of Robert Quinn.
yeah, take Quinn. Okay.
Yeah, I mean he was next on my board, so even beyond the just wanting to have some
Yeah.
levels of affection for the local
I,
guy.
I assumed he was who you're talking about when you were talking about Hayward. the take your pick guy. But
It was him and Houston were right by each other for me.
okay, yeah,
Quinn, yeah, a couple all NFL teams in there, including a first team. Um, at a 69 for a career weighted average. Got some DPOY votes while with the Rams, which is not a thing I remembered. I remembered him having like one particularly good season. I did not realize he was getting
yeah.
DPOY votes, but
The
yeah, he was just
what
really
20 sack year or whatever. Yeah, 19.
yeah, like and he was just kind of like the more spectacular version because they had drafted Chris Long second overall 3 years earlier, and like Chris Long's kind of a weird guy to discuss as far as like whether he's a draft bust because like he was a good player, but like number two overall, it really is a little bit of a stretch. But like Robert Quinn had kind of like the spectacular to like Chris Long being like I think it was being more of a steady guy who just like kind of did everything well, but was not necessarily like a standout necessarily. As much fun as he is, like in retirement and social media and stuff. I think Robert Quinn is at his peak was the more kind of exciting player. And
Yeah,
you look at the career numbers. He's a guy that had 102 career sacks and was playing up until pretty recently, I believe. I think he's retired
yeah,
now, but
yeah. He
you know,
didn't play last year, but yeah, he was.
yeah, he had a couple like kind of cameo stretches in there. And yeah, obviously a really good player, and probably the first round pick of that era of the Rams, which was not a great era for first round picks for the Rams, but like prior to like Aaron Donald, kind of the one that like really worked out the most.
Yeah,
Michael Brockers was fine, and we can kind of say like, oh, Alec Ogletree for being a late first round pick or whatever, but
yeah,
Robert Quinn stood out, and there are really good players. Like the fact that like Andy Dalton was a player that I always thought was like really underrated, like underappreciated for being like prior to Burrow arriving in Cincinnati, kind of like turned that whole thing around.
yeah,
And Ryan Kerrigan was a really good player. Marcel Darius, who was the third overall pick and was a first team All Pro at one point.
yeah,
Randall Cobb was terrific for a while and
yeah. He's
looked pretty cooked last year whenever he got back to Green Bay, but still
yeah. I
around.
mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of guys in there. I think like Darius is like if I was going to go with my actual ones, Darius would have been my next pick in terms of just pure ranking. Who I had. I had Quinn right after him. I had Quinn at 14. So, um, yeah, I mean, guys in here, I think, Jarrell Casey, a guy who, KJ
Yeah,
Wright,
definitely.
like,
Jerome Casey's like a guy I've heard of, but not a guy that I feel like I've given enough respect to based on his career numbers. He was very much up there in
yeah,
consideration for me.
defensive tackles, it's hard because obviously, like,
Yeah,
Aaron Donald recently is who you think of in terms of, like, great defensive tackles. But then, like, I don't know, like,
like kind of it though.
yeah, I mean, like it's not necessarily a position. Like I don't know, like the other ones I think are like maybe the big guys that are almost more like nose tackles, the like Haloti Nada or
Sure.
Vince Wilfork, just because of the massive size of him. But a
Yeah.
lot of those guys, were 3-4 defensive tackles who were just literally space eaters. That was their job. Um,
Yeah.
no disrespect to the aforementioned Michael Brockers, but
I'm just thinking about Gilbert Brown now, who's not nearly as good as the guys you mentioned, but is just the hugest man to ever exist.
he was a big dude. Um, But yeah, I mean, this draft, like, we could have gone, like, I think a top 20, and it wouldn't have been, um, Mike
We
Pouncey, a guy in this draft, even.
yeah. We,
Tyrod
we could have
Taylor's
easily
still in the league. I mean,
yeah. We could have easily done a full 32 and
yeah,
the episode would have taken forever, but we wouldn't have been hurting for decent quality players to pick.
yeah. I mean, Yeah, even Torrey
Nate
Smith was.
Solder.
Yeah,
Yeah, just mention guys who.
yeah. Well, the other big one, Kaepernick, being in this
Yeah,
draft.
that's true.
Um, a guy who, one of the shorter careers of people in here. Obviously, he had played since 16.
Yeah,
Um,
quite famously.
yeah, yes. I mean, there's
Yeah,
won't get into
yeah. I
that,
think
but
that I've mentioned this on podcasts before, but like kind of one of those guys where like basically his entire playing career, I always thought he was like super overrated. Not because I thought he was bad or anything, but like the whole like Ron Jaworski saying that he could like redefine the position. It's like settle down, man. Like let's calm down. And then when he's out of the league, it's like where'd Colin Kaepernick go? That's weird. But
yeah,
like he never had the high like as far as like quarterbacks, he never had the highs of Cam Newton. Like there would actually you could actually even make an argument of like putting him over Andy Dalton just because you could argue that his peak was a little bit better, but it's also hard to go against like the proof of concept of knowing how well Andy Dalton aged. Whereas like Colin Kaepernick, his last season in the NFL like was not good. Like I don't think it should have gotten him out of the league, but like it was not good. So
yeah. It's a guy that you would think, and obviously there's some political stuff in there, the politics of football and some of the
is
things
there with
just
Kaepernick?
I
Actually, now that I think
I'll,
about it, he's the most famous guy in this draft class. What are we talking about?
yeah, he might be. Yeah, a lot of people know him because of, well, yeah,
He still comes up in Facebook memes all the time.
that is true. That's
The minions have very strong opinions on him.
they they sure do, and it's but yeah, I was never one of those people. It's like, I mean, it's like I find it weird that like people wouldn't bring him in, or he wouldn't like. I mean, he got brought in a few places that have looked at him and stuff, but like given his last year and that like as soon as you're not in the league for a couple of years, like it's not that shocking
Yeah,
to be like why not give it to this rookie we've drafted that's a lot cheaper and
if
has
people
no
would still play the
controversy. Like
people would still play the whole like Colin Kaepernick, how come he can't get a job game in like 2021 or whatever? It's like guys, like
guys,
realistically, come on, like
yeah.
it's over.
Not, not everyone
It's
is Joe Flacco, okay? Like,
yeah, he's yeah. His career would have probably been over one way or the other by this point, but
yeah,
was good. Took a team to the Super Bowl. Lost to Joe Flacco in it. In
he
fact,
lost to the elite Joe Flacco in a Super Bowl.
the video.
Is that the one where the power went out?
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
saw the video of Trump saying that Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback. Just got retweeted in my timeline earlier today, so
Oh, did it?
fresh on my
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
Just
All right, let's do a little recap of our draft
yeah.
picks,
That's
though.
Sarah grass.
So Jason has Von Miller, Cam Newton, Cameron Jordan, Patrick Peterson, Tyron Smith, AJ Green, Mark Ingram. Team John is JJ Watt, Jason Kelsey, Richard Sherman, Julio Jones, Cameron Hayward, Justin Houston, and Robert Quinn. And those are some stacked teams.
Yeah, like we doing all right with this. So
Remember the NHL draft we did a few weeks ago where like by like the third pick we were bored? This is not that.
no, this one it was, definitely a lot different. It was fun to do one that was a little more loaded, because we were both kind of doing this like, I mean, really, what we made the decision yesterday to do this draft. So
Yeah. There's a lot of like you can't go wrong kind of guys in this draft, and I'm glad we did it because it gave us an actual good draft to do. It's fun to do bad drafts every once in a while. They can't all be bangers, but sometimes you got to just play the hits. It's like Obama putting "Satisfaction" on his playlist. You got to just please the people, even if it's a little obvious sometimes.
yeah, I mean, it's
All right.
yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a good ride. So John, I'm gonna flip the script here. John, where can the people find you?
Oh, wow. Where can people find me? You can find me on Twitter, the Everything app that has nothing wrong with it and hasn't been getting completely roasted for the last 24 hours. You can find me on there at JohnJF125. That's also my name on Blue Sky, which is kind of boring at this point. But if we all agree to go to it instead of Twitter, we'll do okay. And then check out stlbullpen.com for baseball posts. Cardinals have been kind of depressing the last couple weeks, so haven't really done a whole lot since the trade deadline, but I'll probably do some like historic writing at some point soon. So where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on the Twitters at Draft Day Dadshaw. I still don't tweet very much, y'all. I'm sorry. Um, if I had more time, I would do other things than tweet because I enjoy happiness. But drop me a follow there and join the like 150 bots that aren't bots that follow me. Um, yeah, I have 185 followers, and I have no doubt in my mind that like 170 of those are bots. So,
I gotta check this out.
like, I don't know what I
Is
give off.
one of them a Growbot? Does
Um,
that qualify as a bot?
I don't know if he follows me or not. To be 100% honest with
Wow, that's rough. Oh, he does follow you.
you. Okay.
I just pulled it up. Yeah, 185 followers. That's pretty solid work. There's some pretty attractive looking women in here, huh?
Um,
Like
you know, John,
like obviously.
I wouldn't know because I'm not looking.
Look, I'm not saying that I'm glad that you're, not pursuing them or anything, but they're there. Sure, they're big fans of your work.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, yeah, I got nothing else for that. But be sure to check us
Yeah,
out. Also, the podcast
follow the
out on
podcast.
Twitter
Yeah.
at Draft Day Pod. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and wherever you find them, drop that 5-star like, or 5-star review. That would be the actual terminology. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
Interact with us. Let us know if you have any ideas. If have any fun skills or you want to do anything for the show, like if you have graphic design skills and you want to update John's wonderful
How dare you?
clip art.
How dare you?
Really, I'm just saying
Or no.
that why are you the other one that gets to have your face on the photo on the thumbnail thing? So
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not another person on the. He's holding a football in it, right? Could we put? I would be happy to have your face be on Costner's body and have me be the football.
I mean, I'm fine either way, but or
Right. I believe he holds the. Looking at the avatar, there's not a football visible, but I think it's just out of frame, as are both of our names. So it's fine.
yeah, I mean, it's really, can we just put me on Griffin Newman's body and just put him in there?
Yeah, we're just gonna.
Our poor little temp.
I think what we clearly need to do is reshoot the entire draft day film, in which we alternate. It's just like a 2-man operation where we just alternate characters.
I mean, if we make it to 1,000 episodes, I'll do that with you.
I'm gonna be Kevin Costner and the strength coach. You can be everybody else.
All right. I mean, I guess I could do that. Can I
Right,
just
we
be
should
Frank
probably.
Langella chewing scenery the entire time? Like play everybody as Frank Langella.
Yeah, it's like that whole prompt. It's like the whole speaking of Michael Caine references, but the whole prompt of like what movie would you want to see where everybody's a Muppet except for one human actor. Like Frank
Oh yeah.
Langella is his own Muppet, so everybody else is a Muppet in this.
I mean, I'm cool with that. I mean, now I'm gonna go watch Frost Nixon
Yeah.
to prepare
Shout out to Michael Sheen. Yeah.
for the hottest president's draft.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Michael Sheen's multiple performances as Tony Blair don't qualify, but we'll get this wrapped up. Bye, everybody.
See y'all.